The thing that's tougher to handle are these lunatics that we have inside, like Adam Shifty Schiff, total sleazebag, is going to become a senator. But I call him the enemy from within.
Well, I think one of the ways I interpret it is in the past 3.5 years, Kamala Harris's open border has allowed at least hundreds and maybe thousands of people that we know are on the terrorism watch list.
Not even the people that have come in and destroying our country.
Thanks to her special immigrant visa program in the wake of the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within. Not even the people that have come in and...
Just in Oklahoma City, you had a person who was threatening a major terrorist attack on Election Day.
City, man! It goes all the way down.
Where you get.
I think they wanted to commit acts of violence against members of Congress.
We know that Kamala Harris has let in people into this country who have murdered our fellow citizens, who have planned terrorist attacks against our fellow citizens. The enemy within are people that Kamala Harris let into this country unvetted, unchecked, and undocumented.
What does in an interview over the weekend, the former president said that the bigger problem, he was asked about security in the election, whether we'll have a peaceful election, he said, quote, bigger problems are the people from within, and if issues should arise, quote, it should be handled, quote, handled if necessary by the National Guard or really necessary by the military. Is that a justifiable use of those assets?
Well, is it a justifiable use of those assets if they're rioting and looting and burning cities down to the ground? Of course it is.
The problem in terms of Election Day, I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left.
That's Jared Hughes at lower right in the khaki cap, among the first inside the Capitol. That's Hughes inside at the door, kicking it out so the mob can rush in.
You guys don't want this! You don't want this!
We're going to work with the people to treat those unbelievable patriots, and they were unbelievable patriots and are.
I know in the past you've said Mr. Trump's reckless words endangered you and your family on that day. What do you think when you hear him refer to those people facing charges as hostages and patriots?
Well, I think it's very unfortunate at a time that there are American hostages being held in Gaza, that the president or any other leaders would refer to people that are moving through our justice system as hostages. And it's just unacceptable. I was there on January 6th. I have no doubt in my mind, Margaret, that some people were caught up in the moment and that entered the Capitol.
And we have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left.
You don't want this!
And they were unbelievable patriots and are.
I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Did big technology companies censor a story that independent studies have suggested would have cost Trump millions of votes?
Senator
I think that's
Vance,
the question.
I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
And I've answered your question with another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within. Not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. By the way, totally destroying our country. The towns, the villages, they're being inundated. But I don't think they're the problem in terms of Election Day.
You don't want this!
I think the bigger problem are the people from within. We have some very bad people. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. It should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
Assets?
Well, is it a justifiable use of those assets if they're rioting and looting and burning cities down to the ground? Of course it is, right? I think the question is it a justifiable use of assets depends on what's actually happening. I think as we've seen, and again, I want to be clear here, I'm not painting the entire Democratic Party with a broad brush. I'm painting the leadership and the far-left activists. But we saw this in the summer of 2020. We certainly saw some of this after the election of 2016. There is a core group of far-left activists who are willing to threaten, harass, and commit violence against their fellow citizens. If that happens, if you have a major reaction to an election in 2024, of course you ought to commit law enforcement resources to bring order back to our cities.
But it's also about the victims, the officer victims who were injured that day, and making sure we hold people accountable for the harm that they inflicted on the 140 officers who reported physical injury.
And they were unbelievable patriots and are.
The enemy within are people that Kamala Harris let into this country unvetted, unchecked, and undocumented.
Senator, a lot of these police departments around here have been having trouble recruiting officers after what happened 4 years ago. How do you help these departments and these communities get officers?
You know, I'm not surprised that police officers, not just in Minneapolis, but all across our country, have had trouble recruiting officers over the last few years. I mean, think about what a tough recruiting pitch that is. I'm sure these guys would back me up on it, but come and work for our police force. You're going to get not the greatest pay. You're going to work very hard. You're going to endanger your life. And then when rioters and looters try to burn down our precinct, your own governor is going to abandon you.
Want this.
Unbelievable patriots.
And making sure we hold people accountable for the harm that they inflicted on the 140 officers who reported physical injury.
I recognize that there have been riots in response to the police-induced death of George Floyd, which might be what Vance is referring to. It's not about painting any political side as more or less violent, but the fact that Trump and Vance only talk about the left when speaking about the enemy from within, which is to be controlled by the military. If it was only about violent protesters, then why forget about one of the most severe attacks on American democracy in history, which originated from the right? Instead, the participants in jail are even referred to as hostages and patriots. I think any reasonable person should be concerned about this, regardless of political ideation.